Session 3, Tutorial 1. In this session, we'll look at working with lists, hypertext links, and a few other items. Working with lists. To start the session off, we're going to have a look at lists in HTML. I'm going to create a new file called demo.html just to demonstrate this. You don't need to create this file. HTML has three different types of lists: ordered lists, unordered lists, and description lists. So let's look at each of these in turn. First, we'll take a look at unordered lists. An unordered list is a list of items that have no particular order. You could think of this like a grocery list. I'm just going to give a list of, say, the pet animals that I have. So if I have 3 pet animals, dog, cat, and mouse, I can list these in a text file. Now I want to mark this up in HTML to show that it is a list. For an unordered list, we use the element UL. So I would enclose my entire list in a UL element. So dog, cat, and mouse are my list. Now in a list, each item in the list has its own element called LI. So I'll mark up each of those, dog, cat, and mouse, with its own LI element. Now we can see in the preview that my list shows up as a list of animals with a bullet symbol in front of each. This is an unordered list. The idea of an unordered list is that it's items where the order doesn't matter. So if these are my pets, if I mix up the order and make it mouse, cat, dog, or cat, mouse, dog, the order is not significant to my list. In this case, it's an unordered list. Perhaps I had a race between these animals, and this was how they placed. The dog came in first, then the cat, then the mouse. That would be an ordered list because the order of the list is significant. Mixing up the list would actually change the order of the winners. An ordered list is an OL, and the structure is the same as a UL. It contains list items. Now we see that the list shows up with numbers in front of it. These bullets or numbers are just presentational, so we don't make a list based on how we want it to appear. We can change those. We can get rid of the numbers. We can change them to bullets. On unordered list, we could list with numbers. So we can change that. That's just the presentation. What we want to do is mark the content up based on whether the order matters. If you think of a recipe, for example, you have certain steps to follow in the recipe. If each of those steps is put into an ordered list, that makes sense because you have to do the first step first, then the second step. If we mixed up the order of the recipe, we couldn't follow the recipe. So that's an ordered list. A grocery list is an example of an unordered list. We add items to it as we notice we need them, and when we're shopping, we buy them in the order we come across them. The order of the list doesn't matter. If someone took your grocery list and changed the order around, it wouldn't matter. So that's an unordered list. The third type of list we have is what's known as a definition list. This is quite a different structure, so we'll just start from scratch. DL, which is the element for a description list. Now, a description list is a little different in that it has 2 elements inside of it. So we don't use LIs. We use DTs for a term and DDs for a description or a definition. This was originally intended for a glossary of terms, but it's become more general purpose. So we can use it for a list of items that we want to describe or define. For example, if we had a list of words, we can put each of the words in a DT, a description term, and the definition of it in a DD. And these can be listed here as we go along. The term is shown here, and the definition by default is indented somewhat. If we had more terms in our list, we'd just add more DTs and more DDs. This is one list of terms, and it can have multiple DT and DD pairs. Now sometimes we might have more than one term that has the same definition, in which case we can have multiple DTs in an order that have the same DDs. For example, color, C-O-L-O-R, is the American spelling, but in the UK they spell it C-O-L-O-U-R. So we could put in both spellings, and then our list has 2 terms with one definition. We could also have multiple definitions for one term as well. The definition list is also used for scripts, for plays or movies where we have the actor speaking the part in the DT and what they say in the DD. This is also an acceptable use of the description list. We're now going to use this in our menu page to show our menu items. So I'll open the menu, ctmenu.html, and you'll notice that the article is blank other than the heading. So we'll go to CT Pages. We'll get the menu content for this page. So I'll copy this content and paste it into CT Menu. Now each of these menu items has a name and a description. So we'll mark this up as a definition list. First I'll take my browser back to regular size so we can see. The content's just in there, so it's just all a jumble. But let's mark this up as a description list. So we have our opening DL tag at the very beginning and our closing DL tag at the very end. I'll mark up the name of the menu item as a DT and the description of the item as a DD. We can see in the browser the name, the DT, the term, is bold and has a line under it. That's from our styling, and the DD is indented underneath. So let's mark up each of these in turn. So now our description list is marked up with DTs and DDs, and we can see that our menu is very nicely presented on the page. We'll also use a description list in the locations page to mark up the times and locations where the food truck will be today. ct_locations.html. In here, again, we see the article element is empty except the heading. So we'll go back to CT Pages, scroll down, and there's the locations for the food truck for today. So we can copy that content to locations, put it under the H1. And we'll mark this up as a DT. I'll just quickly mark this up as a DL. So now we have our list marked up as a DL with DTs and DDs, and you can see that it's formatted similarly to the way the menu is. The presentation for this is coming from the CSS. This isn't the default presentation, so our CSS is adding to the styling for this DL element. Now another list that's quite common on web pages is a navigation list. And this is a list of links to pages within our website. So we're going to create one on our About Us page. So I'll open ctabout.htm, and we're going to add a list of links to the various pages in our website. You'll notice we have a lot of pages in our website, but we can't navigate from one to another easily because they're not linked. So what we're going to do is under the banner Curbside Tie, we're going to put a navigation list with items linking to the other pages in our website. We'll worry about linking next, but right now we're just going to create the list for the links. So under the image in the header, we're going to add a list for our navigation links. Now HTML has a special element for navigation links, and it's called nav. This was introduced in HTML5. So we can add a nav element right under the image in our header. The nav element is used to indicate that the content inside of this element are links to other pages within our website. It should be used only for navigation within our website, not for links to other pages on other websites. Now, a list of navigation links is generally considered an unordered list, because if you rearrange the list of links, they would still have the same meaning. So an unordered list would be appropriate here. Now an unordered list, you'll remember, contains LI elements for each list item in the unordered list. So I will add an LI item, and then I'll just copy and paste that for each of the links in my navigation. I have 6 links in my navigation, so I'll just paste in 6 LI elements, and then I'll fill them in. The first one will be about. The next one will be locations, then menu, next is reviews, then catering, and contact. You'll notice as I type those in, the browser is showing them going across the page under Curbside Tie. But when I showed you the UL earlier, it was a bulleted list, one underneath each other. The reason this is different is because the CSS for this page is styling it as a horizontal navigation list. That's not the default for a list. So we'll learn about that when we get to the CSS part of things. But for now, remember that we want to mark up our HTML according to what the meaning of the content is, and a navigation list is an unordered list. In the next section, we'll look at adding hypertext links to the navigation items.